We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Wednesday morning edition of the Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And when I tell you we got a lot to react to from a Tuesday night in college hoops, man, oh man, do we have a lot to react to. So we'll start. Another loss for Kentucky. Defense did not look very good. We did an immediate reaction on Tuesday night, but I want to dive in deeper. How much of it is injuries? How much of it is effort? And even Mark Pope seems like he hasn't quite figured out how to get through to this team and how to get them to play better defense. So we'll open there. And then from there, we got to get to a lot of other stuff that happened on Tuesday night. St. John's, really thought Rick Pitino had his finest moment as St. John's head coach. They are rocking and rolling and alone in first place in the Big East. We also have to talk about Arizona getting a win, Auburn getting a win. You know, Texas Tech is quietly like third place in the Big 12. I don't think anybody's talking about them, 18-4 overall. And then we will wrap. For a while we were calling Arkansas the black cloud of college basketball. Well, I think that mantle has officially been passed on to Indiana, which loses yet again. At this point, it's not if Mike Woodson is leaving. It's, how soon is it going to happen? Who's going to potentially replace him? So we'll talk about another sad day in Bloomington for a frustrated fan base, which I believe, frankly, has every right to be frustrated at this point. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you're subscribed to the Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support in what is a busy time. Make sure you're also subscribed on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts as well. But again, we very much appreciate your support. Speaking of support, do want to thank our friends, do want to thank our partners, do want to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so it's that time of year, New Year's resolution, and you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to eat healthier, but I need to eat something that actually tastes good as well. Well, my friends, that is where Collie Puffs does come in. We've told you the story before. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey is a huge sports fan, and he was sitting on the couch one day trying to figure out, okay, I need something that's healthy but delicious, something that I'm going to like, something that my kids are going to like. Well, that's where Collie Puffs comes in, okay? Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste freaking delicious as well. Your kids are going to like them. You're going to like them. They are the healthy alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle, and it is time for you to try them out for yourself. For more information, do me a quick favor. Go visit ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com. You can also find them on Amazon.com as well. Just search Collie Puffs. Throw them in your cart. You're going to like them. Try them. I promise you. Whatever's in that cart, I don't want to know, but you need to put some Collie Puffs in there as well. So we appreciate Collie Puffs for their support, and we appreciate what they do here with the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, it is a busy Tuesday night reaction show, so I guess it's a Wednesday morning show. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, we could start in a couple different places. We could start in Madison, Wisconsin, where Wisconsin crushed Indiana. We could start at the world's most famous arena, but I want to go ahead and start with the game Tuesday night, Oxford, Mississippi, Kentucky traveling Ole Miss, one of two top 25 matchups on the slate. Thought it was interesting. We previewed this game a little bit on whatever day it was, Tuesday afternoon show. And what we said was pretty straightforward. What we said was, it was a situation where everybody is focused on Kentucky coming in. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Certainly the most notable loss against Arkansas a day ago or last time that they played. And so you kind of really thought that we were going to get the best effort out of Kentucky, but also thought it was kind of worth noting. Ole Miss had lost 4 of their last 5, I actually believe. And basically you thought you were going to get a good effort from them. I thought it was going to be a close, low-scoring game. Ole Miss isn't great offensively, but they're pretty good defensively. You also kind of think, okay, well, wait a second now. Kentucky, we're going to get a much better effort from them after a game in which they just got not really blown out, but frankly embarrassed at home against Arkansas. That's what we're going to get, right? We're going to get a nice, close, low scoring. I think I said 70-68 on Tuesday's show. Yeah, Torres was not right as Kentucky gets smoked at Ole Miss. Ugly, ugly, ugly game if you're a Kentucky Wildcat fan, and specifically ugly on the defensive end. Final score in this one, 98-84. Kentucky has now lost 4 of 5. And yeah, it was not pretty in Oxford, Mississippi, okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. And I think, listen, first of all, we got to give credit to Ole Miss, okay? I don't want to dismiss what Ole Miss did. Chris Beard has that team rolling. By the way, we're going to talk about Chris Beard later as it pertains maybe to the Indiana job. But the bottom line is, listen, you don't want to dismiss Ole Miss. But the story here is Kentucky, okay? It's not just that they've lost 4 of their last 5. It is that the same prevailing problem keeps popping up. It is the fact that they just don't play defense, okay? And so, like I said, I really felt like, in my opinion, one, we were going to get the best effort of Kentucky that we've seen in a long time. The bottom line is that, you look at this team, you look at this program, yes, they are struggling, but they have generally kind of played really well in big spots when you didn't really expect them to play well. The Kentucky or the Duke game early in the season, Gonzaga, remember they were without Lamont Butler. You go on and on down the list. At Mississippi State felt tough. You find a way to win. At Tennessee did not feel like a game that you were going to win. So in general, they've played really well in spots where people haven't expected it from them. And instead in this game, they kind of just rolled over and died, okay? And so when it comes to Kentucky, and by the way, they rolled over and died, played better in the second half, but it doesn't change the fact that this thing was ugly. It was not pretty. And I think 2 things can be true, right? Is one, we do have to acknowledge like Kentucky is dealing with a lot of injuries. Lamont Butler is out, starting point guard. Kirk Reese is out, backup point guard. Andrew Carr is still dealing with that lingering back thing. And so I don't want to dismiss and say that injuries are not part of the issue here. But at the same time, let's also acknowledge something completely different, which is the fact that as you look at this team and as you look at the season, first of all, everybody's dealing with injuries, right? Sakai Ziegler's out at Tennessee. Janai Broome missed time at Auburn. Alabama's been dealing with all sorts of injury problems. By the way, Walter Clayton is out at Florida. I mean, I could go on. Boogie Fland at Arkansas. Every team in college basketball right now is dealing with injuries. UConn hasn't had their best player for a month. So it's not that I want to completely dismiss the injuries. But the thing that I keep coming back to, and the thing that I know a lot of Kentucky fans felt on Tuesday night, because we did a live reaction to it, I think what a lot of Kentucky fans basically said was like, well, wait a second now. It doesn't, you don't have to be a star player to put in good effort. You don't have to be a star player to try hard and compete on both ends of the court. And Kentucky did absolutely none of that, especially early. I mean, all you got to do is look at the final score of this game, but more specifically, just look at the halftime score. You don't have to be an expert to know that in a 40-minute college basketball game, they're trailing by 23 at the half. 23 at the half. They gave up 54 points in the first half. How about this? Ole Miss averaged 8 threes made per game coming into this one. They had 9 threes made in the first half. Overall, they hit 13 threes in this game. And again, we understand that Kentucky isn't at full strength. We also understand that's not an excuse for a lack of effort and a lack of want to on the defensive end. Now, to their credit, they came back. To their credit, they made it a game. It was probably about a 7-8 point game late in the second half before Ole Miss holds on. But you look at the stats, you watch the game, it's jarring. Most points Kentucky's allowed against Ole Miss since 1971, I believe, is a stat that Jimmy Dykes dropped on the broadcast. The stat that is jarring, and you can see it on the bottom line, Kentucky forced a grand total of 1 turnover the entire game. I've been watching college basketball a long time. I don't know that at any point I've ever seen a game where a team has a 24-1 assist to turnover ratio in a game. Only that's exactly what Ole Miss had. And it was just a debacle and really an embarrassment from the beginning. Again, they fought till the end. bring it up to say this is not good. And listen, I think right now it does sort of fall on one guy. Now, I'm not here to do the whole, Mark Pope is on the hot seat or the fan base is, he's losing the fan base. I don't believe that. I think most realistic Kentucky fans believe that coming into this year, it was a total crapshoot, probably a middle of the pack in the SEC, had 3-4 weeks to put together a roster, 0 returning players. That's not something that Rick Barnes dealt with, that Bruce Pearl dealt with, that Chris Beard dealt with in the course of the offseason. But I will say, I'm not saying that, Mark Pope is like on the hot seat or that fans are turning on him. But I will say it is a frustrating trend. And I'll take it a step further. I think what's crazy is even Mark Pope doesn't seem to have answers for this situation. Producer Matt, play what Mark Pope had to say after the game about the state of his team.
For us, the biggest frustration we're feeling right now is on the defensive end, and I'm doing a poor job of finding answers for that right now.
Mark Ole Miss had 1 turnover. Do you ever remember being part of a game where the opposing team had just 1 turnover?
I'm not sure.
What do you think? It was that just good ball handling on their part?
Well, no, it's poor. It's poor. My guys are playing hard. I'm doing a poor job with our team defensively right now, and that's it's a credit to Ole Miss, and it's a real issue for me, and I got to figure out how to.
So that was Mark Pope. And let me start by saying I give him credit, right? He's holding himself accountable. I think he's saying the right things, not placing blame on the players, not placing blame on anybody other than himself. But I will also say that's not an excuse for the efforts that you have gotten defensively. And I think there's really 2 separate things that are popping up together. By the way, chat is very quiet today. Hop in, share your thoughts on the game and your thoughts in general on the rest of the college basketball slate, okay? But when it comes to Mark Pope, when it comes to this game, one, I do think I give him a little bit of credit because he kind of owned it. It's on me. I've got to be better. I'm trying to find answers. But the alternative is, we're now well past the halfway point of the regular season. This situation is getting worse, not better. And this is a situation where like it's been an issue all year and it's not getting resolved in any way, shape, or form. I mean, just look at the results from Kentucky this season. 89 points allowed in overtime against Gonzaga, 85 to Louisville against a Louisville team that was missing 3-4 key players in that game. You go out 85 to Ohio State. Florida 100 allowed in a win. After Florida, how about 90 allowed at Mississippi State? 102 against Alabama. I understand Alabama is one of the best teams in college basketball. It does not change the fact that is really bad. 89 against Arkansas, and now 98 against Ole Miss. Like, that is just a trend that is not getting better. I think the thing that also is concerning, and this is something, I think, smart people that are paying attention to this team feel as well, is that, like, what's up with these slow starts, right? Like it's one thing if you just lose to a team that's better. It's one thing that if you lose to a team that just is a great offensive team. Again, I'm not going to blame Mark Pope because he gave up 103 to Alabama. Everybody gives up 90 plus to Alabama. Same with Florida when they're at full strength. But one, it's happening against teams that aren't great offensively, like Ole Miss, like Arkansas. And beyond that, the other thing we talked about a little bit in the live reaction was, what about the fact that, like, you're falling down big in every game? That is a lack of preparation, not preparation, but it's a lack of showing up ready to go, a lack of showing up focused. That does fall on the coaching staff as well. Again, you were down 23 points at the half in this game. What are we doing here? You were down against Arkansas at the half, and you fell down early in that one. The stunning one to me is still the Vanderbilt game. You were down 14 points at the half to Vanderbilt. Like, you rally, you make it a game. It doesn't change the fact that you should not be falling down 14 points to Vanderbilt. And so it's a combination of the defense isn't good enough, but then on top of that, you're falling behind late. You're showing up not ready to play. And once you fall behind, you can have a game in the second half like Ole Miss where you actually play pretty well. And the problem is that even if you're playing well, it doesn't really matter because you're just not showing up ready to play, and you're falling down by so much that by the time you're back locked into the game, it's too late and you have too big of a deficit to overcome. That's kind of what happened against Ole Miss. Again, against Ole Miss, you played fine. You outscored them by 9 in the second half. You played fine in the second half is what I should say. but you outscored them by 9 in the second half. The problem was when you're down by 23, outscoring somebody by 9 isn't good enough over the final 20 minutes. And so to me, two things I try to never do. I try to never tell a fan base how they should feel or how they should act or anything like that. Again, the Kentucky booing John Calipari, I don't care. If you want to boo him, boo him. If you don't, that's fine. But I will say is that I'm not going to tell fan bases how to act. I'm not going to tell coaches how to coach. But this has to get better and it has to be resolved. I don't know what the issues are. I don't know what the problems are. I'm not a coach, but I'm not paid $5 million to have answers to this stuff either, like Mark Pope is. And so I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. I don't know what they're practicing, but this is just, it's got to get better, and it's got to get better in a hurry. Not because anyone expected Kentucky to win a national championship, nothing like that. But it's because in this SEC, first of all, there's no easy games. And so the more you let this problem linger, the more it's just going to keep kind of compounding itself, and the schedule doesn't really get easier from here. The good news is you have as close to a gimme on Saturday as you can possibly have at home against South Carolina. You just have to win that game. You get the return game against Tennessee after that. We'll see what happens there. That's next Tuesday. But it doesn't get any easier. You still have at Alabama. You still have Auburn at home. You still have at Texas. You still have at Missouri. And you have got to get this problem figured out. I think more importantly, you just can't live life expecting to score 90 points a game or needing to score 90 points a game to win. So I just bring it up because, listen, I still think Pope has largely exceeded expectations in year one, but we're kind of coming back down to where we thought they would be, right? They were picked to finish 8th in the SEC in the preseason. I thought that was crazy. Well, you look at the standings now, they are currently in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, tied for 8th place in the SEC with Mississippi State, Vandy, and Texas. So listen, at some point, I do think you got to get healthy. At some point, I do feel more like, listen, you can blame some of it on not having your guys, but these are issues that have to get figured out. I'm not a coach. I'm not an X's and O's expert, but I ain't getting paid $5 million to have the answers either. Kentucky's got to get that defense right. And by the way, if they can, boom, they could turn this thing around really quickly because they're still scoring at an elite level. Listen, I've said it on all the things that we've talked about when we've talked about Kentucky. I don't know what's going on with Lamont Butler. Mark Pope did kind of have an interesting comment after the game about, that they were asked about the status of Lamont Butler and Kirk Risa. And Mark Pope said, we have to figure out a way to win with the guys that we have. Now, a lot of people took that as, he's going to be, Lamont Butler is going to be out a long time. I just took it as, I don't want injuries to be an excuse, and we got to focus on the guys that are available to play. So disappointing effort from Kentucky. By the way, great effort from Ole Miss. They kind of needed that win. They get it. But man, oh man, what a frustrating game for Kentucky. I think fans have a right to be frustrated. All right, that's what we're going to do. Take a quick break. Come back. When we come back, we'll get to some of your questions, some of your comments. But also, we do have to switch gears. We do have to talk about the rest of a busy Tuesday night in college hoops. Listen, we're going to talk the positives. St. John's, Arizona, Auburn, Texas Tech. We also got to talk a little bit about the negatives, and it is very negative in Bloomington, Indiana right now. They lose at Wisconsin. Another just layover, quit job by the Hoosiers. I don't even think it's a question of if Woodson is back. He's gone. It's just who is next. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So first of all, appreciate the comments coming in. Make sure to include yours as well. A little bit of a quieter Wednesday morning crowd than we're used to. So let's get lively. Let's talk. And listen, let's go ahead and, in my opinion, let's just go ahead and discuss some of the positives before we get to some of the negatives from Tuesday night. And I'll tell you what, I don't know that there's a more positive story in college basketball right now than St. John's basketball, okay? So the Red Storm, listen, we've talked about St. John's. We've talked about that big Rick energy for a while. But listen, I think there was a couple things coming into the only other matchup of ranked opponents on Tuesday night, St. John's and Marquette, okay? So we talked about St. John's on Tuesday's show. I think it's one of the best stories we've seen. They entered the game on Tuesday night, 19-3 overall. I think the 3 losses by combined like 5-6 points, something like that. But I think the critics of St. John's would also sit there and say, well, wait a second now. There's been some weird games where they play well, they don't play well, this, that, the other thing. But they lost at Creighton. They still had 2 games against UConn, 2 games against Marquette, still have to play at Villanova. And I think people were wondering, okay, like where is the signature win? When is it coming? How are we getting it? And is this team for real? Well, I bring it up to say they played Tuesday night at Madison Square Garden against Marquette. First place was on the line. Marquette was 1 game back, tied with Creighton behind St. John's. And I'll tell you what, St. John's left no doubt in this game. Final score 70-64. The Johnnies get the win. And with it, I just got one question. What is that? What is that I'm feeling in the background? What is it? I'm feeling that big Rick energy, baby. That is right. Rick Pitino does it again. Get your Big Rick Energy t-shirts at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. We appreciate your support. By the way, a lot of St. John's fans have gotten these. By the way, got the St. John's fan tweeting at me, you're a clown. What did he say? Something about, I know how Pitino's inner circle feels about you, Torres. Trust me, Pitino's got much bigger things on his plate to worry about than Torres. But congrats to St. John's. They got the victory, and there is a lot of big Rick energy flowing through New York right now, okay? So first of all, in terms of this game, let's get back to the game. Again, you can get those shirts at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Let's get back to the game. Because, listen, I could sit here and lie. 70-64, instant classic. We'll be telling our grandkids about it. It wasn't the prettiest game to watch. Okay, bottom line is, first of all, and we talked about this on Tuesday's show, is that, one, you have 2 teams that play a lot like each other, defensively minded, defensively focused, force a lot of turnovers, kind of grimy in the paint as far as rebounding is concerned, especially St. John's, which was plus 22 on the glass, okay? But 2, it wasn't just how they played. Because there's a certain thing that happened that is not reflective of anything to do with how good the other team's defense or offense is. Free throws. There were a lot of missed free throws in this game. Marquette, 66% from the three-point line, 12 of 18 overall. St. John's, how about this? 17 of 31, 54% in this game. Listen, I know they're not a great free throw shooting team, but I will also say 54% in the biggest game of the year. You still find a way to win, which I think is a positive. But I thought Rick Pitino kind of summed up this game very well afterward. I was talking with John Fanta, and John Fanta asked him about how do you feel about coaching this special group of guys? Producer Matt, play the sound.
How much enjoyment are you taking coaching this group?
Well, it's twofold answer. I'm having a great time because they give me everything they have. When they shoot the free throws and when they shoot from the field, I want to kill myself.
There you have it. When St. John's goes to the foul line, Rick Pitino wants to kill himself. His words, not mine. By the way, great job as always by Fanta being on the scene for the Big East Network, Field of 68, all that good stuff. But it shows you, like, they're far from a perfect team, but they are an awesome team. And I'll tell you this, I think the story itself is just so awesome. And really thinking about this game and thinking about this win. By the way, St. John's right now is 20-3 overall. They're alone in first place. They have a 1.5 game lead over Creighton. At Creighton was their only loss of the season. By the way, they play at UConn next. So if they win that UConn game, like, I don't want to say it's lights out for the Big East regular season title, but it's pretty darn close. And what I'll just tell you is, you know what this reminds me of? What it really reminds me of is the path that we took to get here, to get St. John's to hire Rick Pitino, okay? And for longtime listeners of the show, I'll be honest. Listen, this is going to sound arrogant. I know some St. John's fans get mad at me for even suggesting this. I do feel like I kind of played a small role in the process of getting Rick Pitino to St. John's. And again, it might have been a minor role, but let's go through a little recent history, okay? 2023, and why I want to bring it up, because I think there's some symmetry, some full circle stuff to talk about here. So 2023, St. John's was coached by Mike Anderson. They were really bad. And I vividly remember this night. By the way, we do have a great Torres on SJU account, Torres on SJU, all St. John's all the time. Drew does an unbelievable job with that page, okay? Let's go back to 2023, though, okay? Because in 2023, I remember it was a Monday night. St. John's was playing, of all teams, Marquette on a Monday night in early January, okay? Mike Anderson was the head coach, and it was the most typical Mike Anderson game that we've ever seen. St. John's jumps out to a big lead. They look good, whatever. And then Marquette comes out in the second half and just completely destroys them. I think they won by about 10 or 12, but it wasn't even close. It wasn't even competitive, okay? And so you knew the Mike Anderson era wasn't going to work. We knew it going in, but we had to pretend, maybe he's revitalized after getting fired at Arkansas. But it's clearly not working. They're playing Marquette at Carnesecca Arena, which is the small on-campus facility when Madison Square Garden isn't far down the road. And it was almost like the whole everybody was embarrassed. Like you're playing a very good Marquette team at Carnesecca Arena in front of this tiny audience. I remember seeing the press conference after, and it looked like a high school game. It was in like a broom closet or something. And I remember at the time, and I think I was the first person nationally to tweet anything that basically, like, no excuse, basically, to quote Wedding Crashers, no excuses, play like a champion, okay? Go get freaking Rick Pitino. And so that night, I put out a tweet. Producer Matt, you can pop up that tweet whenever you're ready. This is from January 3rd, 2023. So basically 25 months ago. I said this: St. John's blows a big second half lead, falls to 1-4 in the Big East, and it's clear Mike Anderson is not the answer. To which I ask, give me one reason Rick Pitino shouldn't be St. John's coach next year. He's in the city. He's cleared of NCAA wrongdoings. Only dude in America who can save this program. And so, look, I know now it's revisionist history to say, oh, of course they were going to hire Pitino. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, no, it was far from a guaranteed deal. Remember, Pitino had the situation at Louisville, and there were a lot of like there was a reason he was at Iona. I'll be honest, I was watching the game on Tuesday night against Marquette. I had forgotten that he had to go to Greece because nobody at college basketball would hire him. And so that year, he got cleared of wrongdoing. It was clear that he wanted to get back to the high major level. I believe he did 3 years at Iona, if I'm not mistaken, 2 NCAA tournaments. And I remember saying, like, St. John's, if you're a real program, if you care at all about being competitive, this is the answer. Because Pitino's in town. He doesn't want to leave, but somebody else is going to snatch him up. And I remember that offseason, there was talk of, like, could Georgetown hire him? Texas Tech, I think, was ready to make a move. But it was like, he doesn't want to go to Lubbock, Texas. He's 70 years old. He doesn't want to go to Lubbock, Texas, and no disrespect, but wear a bunch, whatever. I'm not going to do, cliche talking points about Lubbock. But he doesn't want to go to Texas Tech. He wants to stay in the city. He wants St. John's. And I could tell you, it's easy to say now, oh, you have a Hall of Famer as a head coach. Yeah, of course you're going to hire, or you have a Hall of Famer in the city. Of course you're going to. No, there was real consternation. And I will tell you, I was the first. You could go back and look this all up. I was the first person to hint at and tweet at after they lost, I believe, again to Marquette in the Big East tournament that year, that, oh, this is potentially happening, because there was a lot of internal things and the whole reason, by the way, to go back to that tweet from January 3rd, in that game, as soon as I put that out, I had so many St. John's fans reach out to me privately, DM, hey, do you think this can happen? Do you think this is? Do you think this is that? And so it's so funny to me because, like, it's everyone now, it's revisionist history. Of course they were going to hire him. No. I promise you. I was the first one that was like, I think they need to do this. They should do it. There's no excuses. But it took the administration some time. Do we really want to do this? Pitino's got baggage. It's like, nobody cares about baggage. It's the NIL era. You have a chance to get a once-in-a-lifetime head coach, and you got to do it. And I think the reason that I wanted it so bad, and it played out on Tuesday night, it's not just that St. John's is now good. That's not what I care about. What I care about is the fact that St. John's is, and New York City is, a great basketball city that deserves to have a college basketball team like this. And so to go back to my whole argument for Pitino, I use this analogy, and it's not a perfect analogy, but I'm from the Northeast. I grew up in Connecticut. I know New York City. I've spent a ton of time there. People say, oh, nobody cares about St. John's. Nobody cares about this. Nobody cares about that. It's not true. New York City to me is almost like an SEC town from this perspective. It sounds crazy, but let me explain. In the SEC, we label this school's a football school, and this school's a basketball school, and this school loves gymnastics. No. In the SEC, just watch basketball on any given night. The SEC, the mindset is we're not a basketball school. We're not a football school. We are a B grade school. We are a championship school, to use what Nate Oates has described Alabama. And basically the mindset in the SEC is if we're going to compete at the highest level, let's put in resources and let's try to win at the highest level. It's not just football. It's baseball. It's softball. It's gymnastics where they routinely get 10,000 people in an arena on a Friday night, okay? That is the mindset of the SEC, and that's the mindset by the way, in New York City as well. I've spent enough time there. It's not just a Mets town or a Yankees town or a Knicks town. It's if we're good, we're going to come out and support you. But the counter to that is if you suck, we're not going to pretend and play games and act like we have to support you if you're not putting in the effort to be great. And so I knew if St. John's hired Rick Pitino, we would get what we got on Tuesday night. A live, loud Madison Square Garden that is unbelievable. I had a friend text me, and I thought it was a great point, is, we talk so much about all these great arenas in college basketball, Cameron Indoor, Fog Allen Fieldhouse, Rupp Arena, whatever. Is there a better college basketball environment when St. John's is good than Rick Pitino and St. John's, not Rick Pitino, but St. John's, Madison Square Garden? I think the answer is probably no. It's just St. John's fans haven't had a reason to show up. Now, the Garden's great for the Big East tournament when UConn's there or when Syracuse used to be there, but it hasn't been great because of St. John's. But when you talk about great college basketball environments, that's got to be at the top of the list is St. John's. And so I just bring it up because we knew this was all possible. It was just a matter of making it happen. So I give St. John's credit for making the move that they had to make, for making the move that their fans deserved. And now we are seeing the repercussions. Listen, I think there's a big picture conversation to have about Pitino. I think you can argue he might be the best basketball coach that's ever walked the face of the earth. I really, truly believe that. And maybe that's another conversation for another day. They beat UConn. I think that's a real conversation because I understand it's the NIL portal era. But to take over a program, and in 2 years, and by the way, I know the argument's going to be, well, Mark Pope's doing good in year one, and Calipari may make the tournament in year one, and, Louisville, Pat Kelsey. It's one thing to take over a Kentucky and flip it and be good in year one. It's another thing to take over a program that was literally dead before you got there for 2 decades and do what he has done in year two. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Still, 8-9 regular season games left. Got to go to UConn on Friday night. But you just talk about just what is such an impressive effort, impressive moment for this team and this program. Man, oh man, oh man. I just bring it up to say incredible moment for St. John's fans. Enjoy it, appreciate it. What a day and what a night. All right, very quickly, let's go through some other big results from Tuesday night in college hoops. And I'm going to stay on the positive, glasses half full. First of all, let's go ahead, talk Auburn. We'll spend 2 minutes on Auburn. They just destroy everybody. Producer man, we don't even have to beat around the bush. Just post the tweet that I sent you that you saw on Tuesday night. Because There's nothing else to say. We've already said they're putting together one of the greatest resumes that we've ever seen. That I think they're one of the best college basketball teams at this point in the season that I've ever seen. And I know people get offended when you say stuff like that in January, early February, and we are coming off of a year where I truly believe UConn was historically great. It doesn't change the fact that what Auburn is doing is incredible. And I tweeted this out, and our Torres on Auburn account, which producer Matt Helps does a great job with, it shared this. This is how I feel watching Auburn. They literally destroy very good NCAA tournament caliber teams, basically like they're playing a D2 team in November, in October, in a closed door. I mean, they destroyed Oklahoma. That game was done with 12 minutes to go in the second half. It's just, and listen, we don't have to do like the, where do they rank historically and are they an all time? Like we'll save that conversation for another day, another time. But I do think what they're doing is just absolutely incredible. I think they deserve a ton of credit. And I just think, like I said, I think they're one of the best teams that I've seen to this point in the season. I've said it before. I don't really know what the weakness is. And the thing that I really loved about Tuesday night for them is that Bruce Pearl after the game was like, that effort is not acceptable. And basically was not happy with what he saw from that team and feels like there's another level for them to play at. That's after, by the way, let's just remember, beating a team by 18, what was it, 28 points, 18 points, whatever it ended up being. Let's see here. I'm not great at math. 28 points against an NCAA tournament caliber team. Go ahead and give Auburn so much credit. They're by far the best team in college basketball. By the way, maybe another conversation for another day. But I think that, Alabama and Auburn, Alabama is officially a basketball state. Those are the two best teams in the country that I have seen. I know Duke fans will get mad with that, but it's the truth. Two best teams that I have seen. All right, let me do this. Hold on one sec. Producer Matt, just give me a sec. We don't even have to go to break or anything. I just got to do one thing on social real quick. All right. Sorry about that. Hold on. Let's see how. All right. Let's keep the party going. Appreciate everybody's support. By the way, I do see nobody said what has been a talking point. If Rick Pitino, and that might be like a summer conversation, if Rick Pitino had stayed at Kentucky his entire career, listen, he's an ambitious guy. He always wanted to get back to the NBA. Excuse me as I drop my phone. He always wanted to get back to the NBA. But listen, if he had stayed at Kentucky, we're talking about him the way we talk about Mike Krzyzewski. Like we are talking about him like we talk about Coach K. Nobody says Kentucky would have had a minimum of 5 national championships right now. I agree. If Krzyzewski got 5, I think Pitino easily gets 5. Remember, 96 wins the title. 97 gets back to the title game. 98, they win a title with his players. Pitino is probably transparently like, again, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 titles at this point. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. A couple more results from Tuesday night. By the way, we will get to the debacle that is the Indiana Hoosiers here momentarily. But I just want to take a second. I do want to talk about a late night game. Shout out to everybody on the East Coast that stayed up. Shout out to everybody on the West Coast who stayed up because this game ended about 10:30 Pacific time. That's 1:30 Eastern. So if you stayed up for this one, I don't know what else there is to say. But it was Arizona BYU. Really fun game. Arizona right now is tied for first place in the Big 12. Their only loss is at Texas Tech, or to Texas Tech, excuse me. But BYU had quietly won 4 games in a row coming into this one as well. Bring it up. Late night game. Arizona back in the top 25, by the way. I think that's an important note. They're playing like a top 10 team in the country right now, but they go on the road and they get the victory over BYU. Final score in this one. Arizona gets the win 85-74. Man, oh man, oh man. So listen, we just discussed Arizona last week. I don't think that there's like a ton to break down. Remember, of course, they're coming off of the the very, very kind of contentious win over Arizona State, if you will. Bobby Hurley's going crazy, all that good stuff. But listen, like I said, Arizona's playing like one of the best teams in college basketball right now. They win this game. I keep using the stat, but they started 4-5 overall, and they are now 16-6, which means they are what? 12-1 in their last 13 games. That is incredible. I think what stands out to me, Caleb Love, listen, it wasn't quite as good as Arizona State the other day, but he is playing really, he's playing like an all Big 12 player right now. 18 points in this game, 6 rebounds in this game, 4 assists, 2 steals, had a couple big shots early in the game when BYU was kind of in control. And then, it shows how good this team is. Jaden Bradley, I don't even think played well, still finished with 17 points, including 8 of 8 from the foul line. Toby Awaka probably played his best game. And Visar off the bench was 17 points as well. When I look at this Arizona team, a couple things stand out. One, you hate to do this, but I think it's the truth. Probably the best thing that happened to this specific team, Krivas, who was supposed to be the starting center, goes down with injury. I think it made them shake up the lineup. I think it made them play Visar. He is playing at an insane level. But beyond that, let me just say this. I said this on Twitter, and I believe it, is that I do think that we have to start giving Tommy Lloyd some credit. I think that this has been his best coaching job as the Arizona Wildcats head coach. And to be clear, that sounds crazy if you really think about it, because in 3 years, this is what Tommy Lloyd, first of all, Tommy Lloyd statistically is off to as good of a start as basically anybody in the history of college basketball through 3.5 seasons. Okay. But it's also worth noting that in his 3 seasons, won 2 Pac-12 regular season titles, won 2 Pac-12 tournament titles as well. National Coach of the Year. But I think this is the best coaching job that Tommy Lloyd has done as the head coach of the Arizona Wildcats, because the bottom line is, listen, he hasn't done it with a ton, let me even backtrack. Obviously, first year inherited a lot of talent from Sean Miller. Second, third year, kind of his own guys, made 2 Sweet 16s, but started out hot. There's been bumps along the way in the middle of the season, and then you finish well, whatever. What's different this year, they were really bad in February. They were really bad, and guys they were relying on were not playing well. Caleb Love was kind of really bad for about the first probably 4 or 5 weeks of the season. KJ Lewis was not playing well. Krivas was struggling and then out and then back in and then out again. And so I just bring it up because when they were 4-5, there were a lot of people, including me, that just kind of gave up on them for the entire season. Just like, yeah, this ain't their year. They're an NIT team. They probably aren't even an NIT team, and you just kind of got to rebuild for next season. And I don't have all the answers as to what they did, but I think what's obvious is certain guys have stepped up. Like I said, Caleb Love is playing much better. Caleb Love is playing much better. KJ Lewis, I think, has kind of found his role off the bench, and they're just playing really, really, really good basketball right now. And so to me, it's incredible what he's done. I think the other thing that's also kind of worth noting is that he's doing it in the Big 12, right? I mean, it's one thing to kind of roll through the Pac-12, but even in those Pac-12 years, I've said it, is that there were kind of seasons and games where they just kind of didn't show up. Basically just felt like, we're Arizona, we're going to win. And then they would take some strange losses. Lost at Oregon State last year, lost at Washington State, lost to Washington State at home a year ago. And so there's been games where they just don't show up. That hasn't been the case through 11 games in the Big 12. They've already won, they've already won, I think, 4 road games in the Big 12, maybe 5 to this point with the win over BYU. Let's see here really quick. They beat Cincinnati. They beat West Virginia. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Arizona State. So, yeah, that's 5 wins in league play already. And I think BYU was the toughest one. BYU was really playing good basketball coming into this one. Like I said, 4 straight wins for them coming into this one. And a game where they started out hot. Yegor Demon was playing really well to start. They were hitting threes early, and Arizona just kind of weathered the storm. So I give them credit. Thought it was the best game that maybe they've played all season. Tommy Lloyd is having the best season of his career. And I don't know what else there is to say. I know, Producer Matt, we're going to talk about Texas Tech, but we're going a little bit long. I want to make sure to get to Indiana. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, come back. By the way, Texas Tech 18-4, best story in college basketball. Another day, we'll have a nice segment on them because they are rocking and rolling. But what we're going to do, take a quick break, come back. When we do, do want to talk about Indiana. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Let's go ahead and wrap. Do want to talk about, it's funny. I've said for the last couple weeks, it feels like Arkansas is a little bit of the quote-unquote black cloud of college basketball, but they just got that win at Kentucky. They're playing well. And so the black cloud honor, I don't know who it goes to. Is it North Carolina? Is it this team? Is it that team? I think the answer to me is very clearly the Indiana Hoosiers. Okay, so Indiana, it's been a debacle. We've talked about them before. We talked about them after the loss to Illinois. What does it mean for Mike Woodson? All that good stuff. Well, I will tell you what. In a season where Indiana has not been afraid to completely roll over and die, they may have set a new impressive moment in terms of just rolling over and quitting. Okay. By the way, I know Indiana lost to Illinois in what was obviously the biggest loss in program history at home, but that might even fall back behind what happened on Tuesday night in Madison, Wisconsin. Okay. So they're playing the Wisconsin Badgers, who are actually pretty good. Just think about this. They fall down 8-0. Then they fall down 16-2. They fall down 24-4, and it got as bad as 29-8 with 11:30 to go. 29-8. They were down 29-8, down 21 points 9 minutes into the game. Now, of course, from there, they did enough to make it close, to make it competitive, to make it respectable. Make no mistake, this was an embarrassing moment for a historically great team. As I just said, no excuses, play like a champion. Indiana is not. And so we're not even going to talk about the game itself, but we got to talk about what's next. What does Indiana do? Because this is a debacle. Okay. By the way, wearing red, but it's definitely not an Indiana shirt. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. And listen, I could do the thing where I say, oh, at the 9-minute mark, this happened. At the 7-minute mark, that happened. It's like, we're not going to do that. You know why we're not going to do it? Because they were down 29-8 after the first 9 minutes of the game. They quit. They rolled over. And by the way, I got to say, even for a team that has not been afraid to quit this season, that was like a historic quit job in the middle of a Big Ten road game for all the nation to see, okay? They've had bad moments. They got blown out by Louisville in the Bahamas, got blown out by Gonzaga in the Bahamas, got blown out by Illinois a few weeks ago, as we just discussed. But 29-8 at Wisconsin, that's just all-time bad stuff, okay? And so, like I said, I could spend some time talking about whatever, if they did this, it doesn't really matter. Because the bottom line is this team is terrible. And I think what's especially frustrating for Indiana fans is Indiana is a prideful place. And, we don't have to get into the whole history of things. But, listen, I do believe that certain teams, certain programs, there's a certain expectation on how they play, how they look, all of that. I live in L.A., and I remember, talking to UCLA coaches. You can't just win at UCLA. You got to kind of win with style and flair, kind of that Showtime Lakers vibe. UConn fans are I grew up in Connecticut. Now I'm in LA, obviously. And with UConn, it's like, you need to be tough. You can't show up and be soft and get pushed around. And I think there is a pride that is expected to come with Indiana that just isn't there. We've talked about the not showing up stuff, but it's the fact that it's just a number of different things. Sometimes you don't show up. Sometimes you score. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes Umar Ballo is great. Sometimes he's terrible. Sometimes the three-point shooting is good enough. Sometimes it's terrible. Like, you look at Tuesday night. I mean, Umar Ballo is a guy that has been, what do you have, like 21-14 against Ohio State a few weeks ago? Takes 3 shots in the loss to Wisconsin. And so at this point, it's just bad. The Mike Woodson era is coming to an end. A couple things on that. One, I sort of whiffed on the Mike Woodson era, because to me, what's kind of crazy is if you go back to all the criticism that I had of Mike Woodson when he got hired, I just didn't know if he'd be able to recruit, right? Like, I thought the X's and O's would be fine. I thought the X's and O's would be, hey, he's coming from the NBA. All these NBA guys are X's and O's guys. And I thought, okay, he'll be okay in the X's and O's department. It's where it's the recruiting. Is he going to be able to handle the portal? And he's been great in recruiting. Now, I didn't love all the pieces that they brought in. I thought Umar Ballo was a little bit overrated, but he's still really good. I loved Miles Rice. I loved Cannon Carlisle. I loved Mackenzie Mbako when they committed. So the recruiting hasn't been the issue. It's been the coaching. It's been the X's and O's, and it's been the motivation and effort. I saw some Indiana fan, I don't know who it was, said, like, the crazy part about Woodson is, like, when he was a player, he was known as being the effort, energy, want-to guy. And so to see his teams not even play with any pride is sort of incredible. And it sort of speaks to, like, yeah, change is definitely coming in this program, okay? And so listen, I've seen other places like, oh, I think it might be time. It's like, no, it's time. And I can tell you, I've already started making calls on this. I think it's the type of situation where it's not just that, like, they're going to fire him. I think he's ready to move on. It almost reminds me of, like, Juwan Howard last year at Michigan, where it got so bad and he was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, I just don't want to be the coach of this team in this era. I came back to college from the NBA. I thought it was going to be one thing. It's another thing. This isn't the right fit for me or my personality. And so I just think he's ready to move on. Like, I've heard so much is, like, he's ready to move on. He doesn't want to do this. And, like, he'll help the next coaching staff. Like maybe not obviously, be part of the hiring process, but, like, he loves Indiana. He's from Indiana. And if he needs to make a phone call to a current player of, hey, you need to stay, he's willing to do those kinds of things. But I think he's ready to move on. And so with it, let me say this. We're going to spend a lot of time probably over the next 5 weeks talking about who's going to be the next Indiana head coach. By the way, as producer Matt points out, make sure you're following our Torres on IU page, Torres on Indiana page. We just brought on Carter, an IU student on campus to help us run that page. He's doing a great job. But, we're going to have a lot of coaching news, rumors, innuendo. So make sure you're following Torres on Indiana on Twitter, okay? Bring it up to very simply say, let's talk about this job, because I think there's this notion of, oh, Indiana, they're a product of the bygone era and nobody wants to coach there. I actually think it's the exact opposite. I think they're going to get candidates interested in this job that wouldn't have normally been interested even 4 or 5 years ago. First of all, the idea that this isn't a good job or it's nonsense, okay? I understand the Woodson coaching search was a little bit clunky, but there were no great candidates that year. And what I would also say, go back to the Woodson, the hires before Woodson. Archie Miller, it didn't work out. Archie Miller was the hottest mid-major head coach at the time, had led Dayton to an Elite Eight, and Indiana was the one that got him. Tom Crean, we can make fun of it now, had Marquette rolling at a really high level. Kelvin Sampson, it obviously didn't end well, but it's very clear that was a good hire. So, like, this idea that people don't want the Indiana job, I just don't believe it. And I do think, with the NIL that they put into this team, I think there's a lot of people sit there saying, well, wait a second now. Like, they're going to put that much money into this team and it didn't go well. I can go there and I'm going to have the resources that I need to compete at the highest level. And so to me, listen, I do think that it is a situation where more people are going to be interested than you think. And again, we're going to do a lot of candidate stuff over the next couple of weeks. But, and by the way, we did some candidate stuff a few weeks ago. The names that do come to mind to me, listen, first of all, he's going to say no, but you got to call. You got to call Brad Stevens, right? And Brad Stevens, Indiana guy, coached at Butler, all that good stuff. He's not going to take the job. He's still, I think, as crazy as it sounds, because he's been around forever, I think he's still got kids in like high school. And so I think that he is happy at he's happy at whatchamacallit. He's happy with the Boston Celtics. He's happy not coaching. He's happy going to his kids' games. But listen, I do think you have to call. If you remember when Woodson was hired, what was it, like a 7-year, $70 million deal that Woj reported was offered at the time? So I still think you got to make the call, even if it's not likely. I think what's kind of interesting, and I'm seeing this in the chat right now, Billy Donovan, I believe on my grave that if Kentucky had waited, would have been interested. Well, Billy Donovan's about to get fired by the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls just traded Zach LaVine. We don't talk much NBA on this show. Chicago Bulls right now are the 10 seed in the playoffs. Would Billy Donovan just lose enough games so they could fire him so that he could get a college job? But listen, I think Billy Donovan's a name that you have to call. Billy Donovan, we've talked about this. First of all, again, I think he would have been interested in the Kentucky job if Mitch Barnhart had been willing to wait. But beyond that, it sounds crazy. Billy Donovan is still only 59 years old. And so in this era, coming from the NBA, like if you can hire a 73-year-old Bill Belichick to take a college basketball job, if you could hire a 63-year-old Mike Woodson, go ahead and hire Billy Donovan. And I don't think that he wants to get out of coaching completely, even if he is, frustrated, whatever, with listen, I'm tripping over my words here. With Billy Donovan, he left college because he was frustrated with the state of college basketball when he left. But it is more of a professional model, NIL model. We heard Hubert Davis talk about hiring a GM. I would assume he would bring a GM with him. And I think in some ways it's a more attractive model for guys like Billy Donovan. So you got to call Brad Stevens. Billy Donovan, I can't imagine he's brought back to the Bulls after the season. And would he want to come back? They just traded Zach LaVine, their best player, right? Got to make sure that's right. I think they traded Zach LaVine. I don't even follow the NBA. So trade Zach LaVine. They just traded their best player. They're probably going to miss the playoffs. Billy Donovan's probably going to be fired. You got to make that call. And then I think there's a lot of college guys that want that job or would be interested or would at least take a call. Chris Beard. I thought it was very interesting, by the way. Halftime of the Ole Miss Kentucky game on Tuesday night, Chris Beard was asked about his team playing this, and this. He goes, listen, that's the old Bob Knight style. You got to do this and this to win a game. Remember, Chris Beard was a Bob Knight disciple. It was at Texas Tech, but it doesn't change the fact that, he has great reverence for Bob Knight, and I can see a scenario where he would be interested. We've talked about Dusty May, that small buyout at Michigan. Would he be interested? And so you go on and on down the list. And I just think that is a more attractive job than a lot of people realize. All right, I'll tell you what, we got to go ahead and get out of here. I got to get some stuff done here on an early morning here on the West Coast. Got to go take care of some errands, walk the dog, all that good stuff. Do me a quick favor. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, make sure to do so. The YouTube channel, we are so close to 50,000 subscribers. We'll do something special for everybody. Make sure that you are subscribed, rate, review, all that good stuff. If you're not following on social media, Aaron_Torres on Twitter, Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. Appreciate everybody's support. We had some technical difficulties off the top. Yeah, that was a pain in the butt, but it is time for me to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. We will be back tomorrow. New episode.